Hello everyone, this is Remlo from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, nominated on Patreon by Taliesin and Mel, we will be taking a brief look at the Xenos race known as the Rangdan. This video will be a brief overview for certain events that may be explored in greater depth within additional videos in the future. So without further ado, let's begin.
There is no end to the abomination of the alien. Do not allow any guise of sentience to stay your hand. There can be no hesitation when the survival of humanity as a species is at stake.
The Rangdan, also known as the Rangda, were an alien species encountered by the Imperium of Man during the course of the Great Crusade. The Rangdan themselves were one of the most dangerous foes ever faced by humanity, one which not only threatened to irrevocably shatter the Imperium during its earliest days, but posed a threat to the very existence of the human race. Such was the threat posed by the Rangdan that the Imperium instigated not one, but 3 separate military campaigns against the species, known within historical records as the Rangdan xenocides. While little evidence remains regarding the appearance, physiology, or culture of the Rangdan themselves, what is known is that the species was both technologically advanced and extremely aggressive, possessing what would come to be known colloquially as murder minds. Not only did Rangdan warriors possess weapons that were just as advanced, if not more so, than those wielded by the Legione Astartes, but the elite amongst their kind were also known to have possessed personal force field generators, making them not only incredibly dangerous foes to face upon the battlefield, but exceptionally resilient to boot. Some Imperial historians have speculated that the Rangdan may have had a connection to another dangerous alien race, the Sloth. This is due primarily to the fact that the Sloth were noted to repeatedly follow in the wake of Rangdan assaults, in order to harvest the dead and dying for their own perverse ends, though whether this behaviour was indicative of an actual relationship between the two species, or if the Sloth was simply acting as opportunistic scavengers, is still a matter for debate. In battle, the Rangda's preferred tactic was to utilise vast armies of slave soldiers, led by officers known as overlords, in order to wear their foes down through bloody attrition, before the Rangda themselves, under the command of dedicated war masters, moved in for the kill. The Rangda were also known to utilise their own natural talents and mimicry in order to deceive their opponents and commit acts of subterfuge, a technique they used with devastating efficiency over the course of the xenocides. In addition, the Rangdan also possessed incredibly potent naval assets, which included not just powerful battle cruisers that fired blasts of intense electromagnetic radiation, but also gargantuan war moons that could lay waste to anything unfortunate enough that lay within their path. Indeed, the Rangda would go on to utterly decimate Imperial forces during the course of the Rangdan xenocides, with some even claiming that the species even had a hand in whatever fate befell the lost 2nd and 11th Space Marine Legions, though this once again remains unconfirmed. In either case, the Rangdan xenocides were undoubtedly some of the most important and bloodiest conflicts to occur during the Great Crusade, even if much of the truth surrounding them has since been lost to time.
A foe without honor is a foe already beaten.
The Imperium's first contact with the Rangda occurred during the later years of M30, when the 105th Pioneer Company of the White Scars Legion, exploring the northernmost regions of the galaxy, stumbled across the Rangdan within the Advex Maw system. Recognizing the Rangda as a potential threat, the Imperium quickly mustered a force that included 50,000 Astartes from the Dark Angels Legion, as well as roughly 100,000 Imperial Army and Mechanicum troops with which to eliminate the Xenos threat, leading to the first of the Rangdan xenocides. While they would suffer substantial losses during this initial conflict, including that of over 10,000 Space Marines and at least 50 capital ships, Imperial forces, after roughly 4 months of fighting, would prove victorious over the Rangda, forcing the aliens to temporarily withdraw. However, it would eventually be discovered that Advex Moor was little more than an outpost for the aliens, and it would only be a matter of time before the Rangdan made their presence known once more. Approximately 23 years later, the Rangdan would reportedly launch a full-scale invasion of the Imperium from the galactic northeast, beginning the events of the Second Xenocide. Such was the scale of the Rangdan assault that legions of Space Marines and Titans alike were all but completely slaughtered, and entire expeditionary fleets destroyed, with countless worlds tainted and devastated beyond the point of recovery. The Rangdan assault, however, would be slowed at the Forge World of Xana, thanks to the efforts of the White Scars and Raven Guard legions, who managed to hold the aliens at bay long enough for Imperial forces to regroup. The resulting siege lasted over 8 months, until finally being broken by the arrival of Imperial reinforcements from the Death Guard and Dark Angel's legions. Over the next 20 years, at least 300,000 Astartes drawn from 9 Space Marine legions were committed against the Rangdan, with some contingents even being commanded directly by the respective Primarchs during the final assault upon the world of Taxil. While few records remain of the final hours of this particular battle, it is said that the Rangdan were thwarted by none other than the Emperor himself, following his destruction of the mysterious Labyrinth of Night. The remnants of the Rangdan fleet would be hunted down and destroyed by the Imperium, who believed the threat of the aliens to be finally quashed. Despite this, however, Lionel Johnson, the Primarch of the Dark Angels, established a sub-faction within his legion known as the Order of Broken Claws, whose purpose was to study Rangdan physiology and technology in preparation for any hypothetical future incursions from the Xenos. It was also during the course of the Second Xenocide that the Alpha Legion, who by this point had all but disappeared from Imperial records, were believed to have suddenly reappeared to offer their aid to Lionel Johnson, although it remains unclear as to whether or not this event did indeed take place during the Second Xenocide or the Third. Indeed, it is the Third Rangdan Xenocide that has the fewest surviving records, with some archivists believing that they were deliberately erased by the Imperial government. What is known, or at the very least commonly accepted, is that the Third Rangdan Xenocide took place roughly 30 years after the Second, and that the resulting campaign to purge the aliens was jointly conducted by both the Dark Angels and Space Wolf legions. Some claim that these two legions, in conjunction with Mechanicum forces recruited from Xana, conducted a year-long campaign of genocide against the Rangdan, after a scouting force from the White Scars discovered the location of the Rangdan homeworlds. Others, however, believe that the Rangdan once again launched an invasion of the Imperium, leading to a conflict of such apocalyptic proportions that the entire galactic northeast was embroiled in the fires of war, with the Dark Angels themselves said to have lost over 50,000 Astartes in the resulting carnage. And yet others still claim that the purpose of the Third Xenocide was to purge all worlds that had been tainted by the Rangdan, regardless as to whether they were populated by civilians or not. In either case, the Third Rangdan Xenocide would be the last known encounter between the Imperium and the Rangdan, with many believing that the species had been finally driven into extinction. Despite this, however, some have speculated that the Rangdan, while maimed, had not been truly destroyed, and that the Dark Angel's Order of Broken Claws continued to stand vigilant against the possible return of the aliens, even as the events of the Horus Heresy began to unfold. And that concludes this edition of 40k Lore for Newcomers. If you liked this video, consider supporting us on Patreon for more content. To those that are new to 40k, we hope you learned something. So leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.